Hi everyone and welcome for another Apitherapy video. And now there's a lot of different alternative medicines and so on. We're always talking about holistic approach in health. And we're getting used to understand health at different levels. And this video is very special because we'll be talking about, there's a quote that says, "Only beauty will save the world." And this time we'll talk about how healthy is our conception of beauty. And apitherapy can help tons to do this. This is quite fascinating. Stay tuned with me. We'll get there. So it's very, very simple how our approach to work on this. It's simply based on the spectrum of light that the bees are able to see. Now, you might know already that bees see different colors than us humans do. For us, our spectrum of colors go from red to purple. And for the bees, it goes from yellowish, a little bit of orange, a little bit yellowish orange, to ultraviolet. And it's a big difference because, the colors of light, all light goes at the same speed, but their wavelength is different. So let's say red, for example, wavelength is at 700 nanometers, and purple, which would be at 400 nanometers. Now for the bees, they go from 600 nanometers, so yellowish orange kind of color, to ultraviolet at 300 nanometers. So the wavelength is way shorter, so it's a way faster wavelength. So we see that it's kind of more subtle what the bees are seeing. They can see things that are way more subtle than what we can see in terms of light colors. And those colors that the bees see, we just don't see them at all. We don't perceive that specific color. So this is really interesting because you know that bees are very, very often looking at flowers. When the bees are foraging, when they're out of the beehive, all they're really looking at, basically, it's flowers all the time. That's what they're looking for almost all the time. They also want propolis, so resin from some trees, but usually, and water and a few other things, but usually they want a look at flowers. And of course, flowers, they know that bees see ultraviolet colors. So they use that specific color on their own petals, on the flower itself, to attract the bees. And not only to attract them, but even to show them specific parts of the flowers. For example, landing areas, landing stripes, where the bees could come and land to collect the nectar and pollen on the flower. Very often they'll use some ultraviolet color there that we never see. And same thing also for those places where the nectar is flowing from. Well, they'll also very often use ultraviolet color around those areas because bees see really well ultraviolet color. They see really well ultraviolet, also blue really well, and green not that well, but then yellow, they see it more. So it's really interesting to see that bees see colors and see actually some beauty on the flowers which we don't see. We cannot even perceive that ultraviolet colors. It's impossible. Our eyes cannot see that wavelength. They don't get it, but the bees do. So they see beauty which we don't see ourselves. And this is teaching us that the beauty we seek, because everybody is seeking beauty, we love beauty, we want beauty, we want it so much. And when we seek beauty, very often we seek certain, let's say, wavelengths of beauty. We see a certain type of beauty very often in the marketing world of today, and marketing is so huge today with the internet and it's all over the place all the time. Very often marketing will use beauty in the wavelengths of, let's say, sexiness. They will go that line. But the bees, and that wavelength of sexiness is pretty pretty long wavelength, like it's a pretty slow wavelength, let's say. And but the bees, they go the other direction. They go and try to find beauty that has shorter wavelength. So they are going for more subtle beauty. And you, of course, you felt before a certain level of beauty, for example, in the person you love. Of course, the person you love, you find that person beautiful, but this beauty is not necessarily, it's weird because I don't want to say physical, because yes, it's still physical, but it's not only about being sexy. It's different. It's another type of beauty. And that tells us, yes, there are different types of beauty, and there's very subtle understanding of beauty as well. And very often we perceive it in the face of a person, and we see the beauty in a person, and sometimes it's very, very subtle. And the more subtle, the more attractive it is for the ones that are looking for subtle beauty. So this is just some kind of beauty hygiene there, just to think about what type of beauty we're looking for, because the bees teach us that there is some level of beauty that is just so subtle, that it's just so pretty, it's just really high, it's something we want to go for so much, and that really generates life, that very subtle beauty. So I find this idea extremely interesting, knowing that only beauty will save the world, that famous quote. Well, I think understanding what bees teach us with the flowers, which is a perfect symbol for beauty. You know, flowers, everybody agree saying that flowers are beautiful, they're pretty, we love them. Well, they actually use some colors which we don't see. So there's part of their beauty which we don't see, and the beings that really need those flowers, that need that beauty, they love that subtle beauty. So this is just amazing for me. I just wanted to share this with you today, and also just to bring this a little bit deeper into our own understanding of who we are. Just as colors are different wavelengths of light, which always go at the same speed, which is always somehow the same, but different wavelength, same thing goes with qualities. We know that qualities, it's just like light that is in a person. You know, a quality, we always say, oh, that person is bright, like there's a specific quality in that person. Well, those qualities is just like colors. It's different wavelength of light, of that same quality, that same strength that goes through people. That's why very often, you know, we say, oh, peace is kind of bluish. You know, and very often we kind of have a feeling of what color goes with what quality. And so there's some correspondence there. So there are some qualities which we're not used to look at. And that's beauty. Because beauty is always about light showing how pretty, how harmonious is either a certain shape, a certain being, or a certain life form. And it's always like this. That's what beauty does. It's a light that shows us, oh wow, this is so beautiful, and we love this. We want that beauty. So same thing goes with the qualities. Knowing that there are qualities and some beauty which we don't usually perceive tells us, oh, we actually have to work on ourselves, we have to try to feel those qualities. And sometimes this is really worth it. Actually, it's always worth it, because that subtle beauty is kind of endless. Like there's so much room for that type of beauty. And and it works hands in hands with the qualities we'll cultivate in ourselves. So when you hear that quote, only beauty will save the world, I think that we're talking about that type of beauty, really. And the bees are actually teaching us how to work with it. And now, to go a little bit further in apitherapy, I just want to make a connection with that type of beauty, the type of subtle beauty, and the bee products. When you look at pollen, for example, bee pollen, you see that food. If you look with the normal eyes, you see pollen, fine. Okay, it's a form of food, some kind of powder, little grains. And so you see this, okay, and you taste it. Oh, it tastes kind of intense. It has some kind of a strong taste. And you can leave it there. But if you look with those special bee eyes, where you see the real subtle qualities and the real beauty of pollen, you see that, oh, it's a food that has as much protein and sometimes more protein as meat, and it has tons of vitamins, tons of minerals, lots of probiotic in it. It's really good for the intestinal flora. There's so many benefits from pollen, and not only that, but also it's been produced without harming any life form, not even a leaf. And when you see this, you start seeing the real qualities of bee pollen. So all bee products have a specific beauty which is subtle, difficult to perceive. We have to train ourselves to look at those qualities, to look at this beauty and find it. And when we find it, we say, wow, this is what I want. This is so beautiful. It's such a beautiful food. We usually don't say this because we don't look for it. We look for something, I don't know, I don't want to describe this, but it's important to cultivate those criterias where we're looking for food that connect with those kind of subtle qualities, those subtle criterias. And the same thing goes with the propolis. What a subtle medicine. It didn't hurt anything. Again, not even a leaf. Didn't hurt anything while the bees collect propolis, and we can harvest some from the bees without hurting anything. And that propolis also has no side effects. It's a very subtle medicine. So knowing that all bee products are connected with those subtle qualities, that subtle beauty, which is reflected on the flowers, for me, this is just fascinating, and it's a way of educating ourselves that the bees have. And also, I didn't even mention, but of course, they're responsible for pollinating so many plants. So they create life while they harvest all this. So they generate life. So again, this is another aspect of the beauty of the work of bees. And now that you understood that the bees see some beauty on the flowers which we don't see, well, now you know that this is all about beauty. All those criterias I mentioned, they're all beautiful. They're all harmonious. When you shed light on those, well, wow, you're just amazed. So this is the big point. Now I just want to show you a few pictures. Now this is something different. So I was talking about how flowers really use those colors, like ultraviolet color. There's some of that ultraviolet color on the flowers which we cannot see. So actually the flowers are reflecting ultraviolet light, and the ones that can see it then can see that reflected ultraviolet light. But then there's something different, which is if you actually use a UV light, a black light, on flowers, you'll also find something really interesting. You'll find that they have some kind of fluorescence in them. So if you use that UV flashlight, and you need a light that has pretty short wavelengths, 350 maximum. Don't go at 395, it's not good. Use 350 wavelength for nanometers wavelength for your UV light. and also it needs to block all normal light, anything that is higher than this. So basically you turn on your light and you don't see anything because it's UV light, you cannot see it. And then you put it on the flowers, and those flowers will actually absorb some UV lights. So they don't reflect UV light at that point. Well, they do, but we cannot see it. But they absorb part of that UV light, and they actually transform it, and with fluorescence, they will emit some light that is visible to us. So they'll reflect some red, some blue, some many different colors of light, which we can see. So this is quite amazing to do. So I'm putting some pictures right now, which you can look at. So of course, I always put the picture with regular light, and right after that, the picture with the UV light only. So that gives you an idea what you can see. Now this is a very simple pictures I took. Of course, you can do much better if you have even a better UV light than what I had. I had a not bad one, but not the best either. So you can do much better. If you look on the web, you'll see that fluorescence of the flowers is just amazing. But remember that fluorescence is not what the bees are actually seeing during the day. Yes, we can all perceive that fluorescence because it's actually in the spectrum we can see. So since we don't see this really during the day, it's simply because that fluorescence is not that strong. So when there's regular light, we see mainly the other colors showing. So it does add up into what we see, but it has very little influence onto what we really perceive. It adds a little bit, and sometimes it creates some special intensity in flowers. We love flowers so much. We see how beautiful they are, and part of it might be that fluorescence, yes, but what the bees are really perceiving, which we're not, is not that fluorescence. It's actually the reflection of the UV light that they have, and that's what they see. That's where the color, the real UV ultraviolet color come from the flowers. Just wanted to be really clear on this so everybody understand that. So you see a couple pictures of those fluorescent flowers. You can do just the same at home. It's really fascinating to start thinking and working a little bit with what the bees, that ultraviolet light which the bees see and the effect of it and so on. It's just fascinating. So I hope that I made my point and you understand how all bee products are connected with that invisible beauty which is in all of us, and we should train ourselves to see it more and more. And all those bee products are totally in line with that very subtle beauty. So thank you very much for appreciating. Please subscribe, like, share. It's a very, very small channel. I hope, I think there's lots of really good potential videos. If you want to learn about anything on apitherapy, and I'll do way more videos in the future. There'll be a lot to learn. So anyway, thank you for listening, and see you another time for another apitherapy video.